Welcome to Coffee and Community Cutaneous Lymphoma Conversations, brought to you by the Cutaneous Lymphoma Foundation. I'm your host, Holly Preeb, and I'm thrilled to have you with us. Today, we have a special guest, Sheila Johnson. I'm so excited to have Sheila join us today. Not only is she someone living with cutaneous lymphoma, but she's also been an incredible advocate for others, doing an extraordinary amount, giving back throughout the community. She's a longtime volunteer for the foundation, sharing her story many times and inspiring so many of us. So grab your favorite cup of coffee, settle in, and join me in welcoming Sheila to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today, Sheila.
Thank you so much for having me. I am always excited to talk about, this journey with living with cutaneous lymphoma. For whatever reason, I was chosen to have this journey. And again, I'm always happy to share and hopefully inspire others, to, regardless of this diagnosis, to live our lives to the fullest. So I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start kind of at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about your journey, from the diagnosis and kind of where you were and the basics of your diagnosis.
Sure. I had this random rash and it was like 2005 and it looked like hives. They were perfectly round. They were inflamed, red, itchy, and on my thighs, my hips, kind of like my trunk. And so I go to the allergist first, actually, because I was that kid who had to go and get an allergy shot once a week because my allergies would just be crazy. And so it just kind of reminded me of a rash that maybe I had as a kid. So I go to the allergist. We do all kinds of allergy testing, even an industrial testing, because at that time I was a project manager for our local natural gas distributor for new commercial construction. So I was always on a construction site. So the allergist thought maybe I was coming in contact with something on those sites that I was allergic to. Well, come to find out, no. The same things I was allergic to as a kid were the same things I was allergic to as an adult. And he gave me a steroid regimen. It went away. It came back again. I go back to see him. And he says, I'm going to send you over to a dermatologist because I think there's something, else going on there. Go to the dermatologist a couple of times. He then sends me to see a well-known African-American dermatologist in our community. The two of them are trying to figure out what this rash is. My lead dermatologist says to me, I think you might have a rare skin disease. Those were his exact words. He never used the word lymphoma, cutaneous lymphoma, none of that. And so he said, so I'm going to do a couple of biopsies and we'll go from there. He do the biopsies and they come back negative. Okay. And the rash went away with the topical steroid.
Sure.
It was gone. It was 6 years before I had another breakout. And
Wow.
Holly, it was the exact same breakout in the exact same location. And so my mother at that point was retired, but she was a nurse. She'd been a nurse. And she's like, honey, you need to go back to the doctor. Something's going on. And so, of course, I go back. My lead dermatologist had moved back east. And so I went back to see the second dermatologist that I'd seen, the African-American dermatologist. And he takes one look at my skin and he says, I'm pretty sure you have CTCL. I said, what is that? Then he shows me my chart from 6 years ago where he hand wrote on the chart, this patient should be tested for CTCL every 6 months. And I said, well, now, wait a minute. First of all, what is that? And why come you didn't tell me?
It's been 6
And
years.
it's been 6 years. And he says, I'm so sorry. He said, I was not your lead physician. So I assumed your lead physician had this conversation with you. I said, no, he didn't. So that began my very first clue that I needed to learn how to be my own advocate. I didn't ask any questions initially. I'm like, this is what they said. And it went away and I went on about my merry business. And so he immediately contacted the university hospital here. And he said, Sheila, I'm not going to do a biopsy. I'm going to call immediately over to the university hospital. There's a team of specialists there that I want you to see. And sure enough, when I go to the specialist, he does some tests to confirm my CTCL diagnosis. And I've heard people say, other patients say, that it took, several different incorrect diagnoses to get to the correct one. And so I just didn't have any diagnoses initially, and it went away. So it seems like that is kind of par for the course based on my information and what I've heard other CTCL warriors say on how long it took them to get an official correct diagnosis. Yeah.
Yeah. Typical, but not necessarily where we want it to be. We want to get that improved for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, that's quite a way to start with the 6 years in between and then to get the diagnosis. How did that talk to me about how did that feel when to know that you've now got this diagnosis and it's, a form of cancer, it's rare, and that you've actually been living with it? I mean, talk me through that. Like what's that feel like?
Yeah, that was Holly, that was a lot to wrap my mind around. In particularly because of all of the other things that were going on in my life. I felt like, I was just getting my life back on track. I had gone through an ugly divorce and, I was beginning to live again. I'm making new friends. I started a wine club, a martini club, a book club, began to travel. And I have two daughters, and life was like, this is great. And then bam, I'm like, okay, now wait a minute. Okay, what's really going on here? And so it was a lot to wrap my mind around, Holly, but I will tell you, having the doctor that I had made all the difference in the world.
Mm,
He was very calm. He was very informative. And when he said to me and looked me in my eyes and said, Sheila, you're going to be fine. He
mm,
said, my father had CTCL and my father lived a long, productive life. And when he transitioned, this is not what he transitioned from. He said, yes, it's chronic. And so it's something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. He said, but we've caught it early. He staged me at stage 1B. And when he said, and he even told me, he said, if you were to go someplace else, he said they would just take a sit, watch, and wait approach. They would probably give you a topical steroid and have you come in every 3 to 6 months and run some tests to see where you are at. He said, however, because my father did have this, I know what it can do. I've seen it up close and personal. And he said, we can take a sit, watch, and wait approach if you like. He said, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you choose. He said, or we can be as aggressive as you want to be. And I said, you know what? I'm a young woman. And knowing that I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life. Yeah, I don't want to take a sit, watch, and wait approach. Let's go get it. And so we started phototherapy, which is where you go to the dermatologist 3 times a week. And I got into what looked like a tanning booth for certain periods of time with these special lights on my skin. And so we did that for probably about a year. And then he ran some tests and we discovered that my CD4, CD8 ratio, which are T cells, had went up. So when I was
mm.
initially diagnosed, the ratio was slightly over 3 to 1. By this time, my ratios was almost 7 to 1. And so he says, so what that says to me is that you need a more systematic approach, not just a topical approach of dealing with cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. And so that is when the oncology team was introduced and I started photopheresis. And thankfully, my body responds well to it and my body continues to respond well to it. And although now I'm on what's considered like a maintenance treatment plan, I get 2 treatments once a quarter. It is indefinite. And I'm grateful to have had a team right here in my city. I didn't have to travel 3 and 4 hours. I live 10 minutes from the university hospital. And
That's
so I feel
awesome.
it really is, Holly, after talking to other warriors and how far they have to drive and the wear and tear that is on you physically and psychologically, so I feel very fortunate to be in a city that has a specialty team in this very rare type of cutaneous lymphoma.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to tell you though, listening to you talk, you clearly, you've got your head wrapped around this diagnosis. You've got your head wrapped around what those tests mean, and you're able to come at it in a really thoughtful approach now. I'm wondering, has it always been that way? Were you able to be this calm because of your treatment team, or were each one of these steps that you took and the different, like, how was that? How'd you wrap your head around that? In going from light therapy to systemic therapy, and kind of you went through it in
Yeah.
such a just a really calm, and this is just the way it went. But I'm wondering, how did you cope with that in the real time?
So I'm calm now, but in real time, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so it wasn't until I needed a systematic approach did fear creep in. Before then, I wasn't afraid. And so because of them, I wasn't afraid. And because of my mother, my support system, but it was when I was like, wait a minute, what? We got to hold on, time out. What's going on? That really took some time for me to wrap my mind around that. I had recently lost my first cousin, who was 5 years younger than me, to her second battle with triple negative breast cancer. So immediately I'm thinking, oh my God, am I going to die? Am I going to die today? Am I going to die tomorrow? And so it was, I mean, and Holly, I had to have plenty of therapy to really help me wrap my mind around it. One of the things I did when I did go and get the phototherapy and was in the tanning booth was I developed a mantra, because you're in there and it's quiet. It's a kind of a strange kind of feeling. But at this point, that mantra became even more important. And that mantra is, I am healthy, I am fit, I am the center of abundance, and I am the perfect size 8. My second one that I focused on was today, because I had to look at it one day at a time. But it was today, I choose faith over fear,
Mm.
because I know that fear can cripple me. Fear could just stagnate me. And I didn't want that to happen to me. And so each day I had to get up and go, okay, we're choosing faith over fear today. No matter what comes, we're choosing faith over. And I had to have these conversations with myself. And I remember at one point having a conversation with my therapist, and she asked me, where does the fear come from? What are you afraid of? And I'm like, I'm afraid of dying. And well, Sheila, how old do you want to be before you die, or when you die? And I said, first of all, I never thought about that. And I said, well, I want to live to be a 90-year-old spunky woman. And she says, well, what makes you think that you're not going to live to be a 90-year-old spunky woman? And I don't know what it was about that little bit of exchange that really shifted my thoughts. And I was like, what? You're right. This isn't going to stop me from living to be a 90-year-old spunky woman. And so it was, and again, that also became one of my mantras. I am going to live to be a 90-year-old spunky woman. That is when that shift started coming. But it wasn't all at once. It wasn't an automatic thing. I also knew that for me, I needed the information. I needed to understand what exactly is going on here and what can I do to impact the quality of my lifestyle. And so that is really kind of where I shifted my focus. Science was going to be science. Science is going to do what it's going to do. But how was I going to own this? Was I going to sit down and just let it own me, or was I going to grab it and own it? And so at that time, my oldest daughter had been a vegetarian for probably like 2 or 3 years. And I'll never forget, we were in this like room, looked like a conference room, with the oncology team. And I didn't do any research because I didn't want to be scared. I didn't want Google to scare me. And I wanted to rely on the professionals, the information, the science, the research. But however, my daughter had done a bunch of Google research. And so when we're in this meeting talking, and so she asked the oncologist, she said, so what I hear you say is that my mother's CTCL is indolent. And he stops and he says, how do you even know that word? You know what it meant? And so the two of them began to have a conversation about that. And he said it's trying to get active, which is why your mom is here, because we want to jump in front of it, because her CD4 and CD8 ratios are climbing. So that's an indicator to us that it's trying to move and do some stuff. And we're hoping that this treatment is going to stabilize it so that her CTCL does become indolent. I was like, wow. And so she also asked, what can we do? And what does her diet, how does her diet impact? How does her working out and all those sorts of things impact? And of course, it's for any of us, a diagnosis or not. The better we eat, the stronger our bodies are. And
Check.
so she came over that day, and anything in the pantry that was in a can or a box, she took it out.
Whew, I'd be
And
in
she's
trouble.
right, exactly. I was in trouble too, Holly. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what are we doing? She said, we are taking these things to a local pantry. She said, Mom, you can't eat these things. She said, these things are dead. She said, and because they're dead and they're filled with preservatives, she said, you have to eat food that is living, that is going to fuel your body and strengthen your body. She said, so this isn't it. And so then I'm like, hey, I'm following her lead because obviously she knows more than I do at this point. And she ordered me off of eBay an Jack LaLanne juicer. I mean, that thing was probably this big. And then she shared with me the benefits of juicing beets and green leafy vegetables and celery. She had me taking chlorophyll every day and what chlorophyll does naturally to the blood, whether you have a diagnosis or not. And so the vitamin D, the vitamin K, she's like, Mom, these are all things to help with inflammation. And then as far as eating, for probably about the first, probably 3 to 4 years, the only flesh that I ate was fish. She was like, are you juicing today? And even the utensils that I use only could use stainless steel. And the juice had to go in mason jars. And you can only leave it in the refrigerator 2 days because there's no preservatives in it, yada, yada, yada. All of my vegetables were fresh. Even today, and I will eat sometimes if it's out of season, frozen green beans per se, but all of my fruits and vegetables are fresh. So I go to the market probably 2 or 3 times a week. And even though I've added other meats back into my diet, I am very cognizant of, is this going to cause inflammation in my body? Because I know that inflammation in my body is not going to be helpful for me. And so I just try to, focus on those things that I can control, which is that. I also started drinking 80 ounces of water a day because she's like, look, Mom, hydration, your skin is dry. Hydration comes from the inside out, not the
Mhm.
outside in. I was like, okay. And I can tell you if I go 3, 4 days in a row without drinking at least 80 ounces of water, my skin, which is our biggest organ, begins to talk to me and tell me. It'll start feeling a little prickly or might feel tight. And I'm like, uh-oh, what have I been doing in my behavior that could cause this? And then it helps me to get right back on track. Yeah.
That's incredible. You talked a lot about leaning into your faith, leaning into your children, your health, and other areas for getting good support. Did you use the cutaneous lymphoma community, people in as peers? And if so, how did that? Because I know you give back so much, and you are such an amazing part of the cutaneous lymphoma community. Did you use that throughout your journey to help?
Here, and I'll tell you how I got connected, Holly. It was one time the Cutaneous Lymphoma Foundation hosted I think it was like talk to your doctor. And it was like a talk to your doctor event in my city. And so my doctor is the one who would let me know to come to this event. And that is how got connected to the Cutaneous Lymphoma Foundation, was through that first event. And I'm going to say that was probably about 2 years, maybe 3 years into my diagnosis. Yes. And after that, I'm like, oh my God, there's a wealth of information here. People need to know. Yes.
We talk about, peer-to-peer support. And again, like I had mentioned, you're such an amazing advocate for your peers. It's it's just that ability to be able to help people understand what it's like to connect with somebody else who's lived with that. With similar, might not be the same because, everybody knows cutaneous lymphoma, we're all one of one, right? We're all very unique individuals, but this ability to be able to share some experiences. When you think about the next person who's going to get that diagnosis, Sheila, and what is it that you hope that they know when they get their diagnosis? I mean, you've had some years now under your belt to really wrap your head around the course of action and that you're living your best life. And what do you want the next person who gets a cutaneous lymphoma diagnosis to know?
I want them to know that first of all is that their life matters and that there are people like the Cutaneous Lymphoma Foundation that can connect them also with other people who have lived through this. And so I think one of the most important things is connecting with another survivor, someone who understands your story, someone who understands the symptoms that you're going through, someone who isn't just, they can truly look at you and talk to you, and that empathy and that compassion is there where you're heard. Because I think oftentimes we don't feel heard. So connecting with someone that can help you make sure that you feel heard is really important. And information. I'm a firm believer that information is power. And I'm not saying necessarily information from the web. Sit down with your doctors, develop truly a team sort of relationship. It's like, look at here. We're going to be here for a while. You say this is chronic. And so that means, doctor, you and I have to be on the same page. And helping them understand who you are as a person. And because I do understand that not everybody wants to know all the details. Like, I want to know all the details. What is this? How is this? What is this for? How does this impact my CTCL? I want to know all of that because to me, it helps me to make informed decisions. Those things that I can control, I want to be able to control them and impact them. And also finding peace with the diagnosis. None of us asked for it. And we didn't I don't want people thinking that they did something wrong to get it or deserve. None of us deserve it. It is a part of life. And to know that it's not your fault. Because I think oftentimes we go, well, what did I do? How could I have prevented this? Did I do this too much? Did I do that too much? Did I not get enough sleep? Don't beat yourself up. Because that puts you in a headspace that can spiral downward. And so I think really coming to terms with the diagnosis and that it's not any fault of your own. And again, building those relationships. And Holly, if I could tell people, and I tell people this often, attending the forums, the patient forums, that is huge. To put patients and doctors in the same room like the Cutaneous Foundation does, that in itself equips me. I feel very confident in my diagnosis because of that. When I tell people that I get to sit in a room with doctors and researchers, they're like, what? How is that possible? And can you imagine for any disease state out there, if that was there, how empowered the patients would feel? It is when I can't even express enough for new people that are being diagnosed, get involved, get engaged. For one, to be around people who are like you, who understand what you're going through, but to listen to, and doctors that may not be your own. And you can raise your hand and ask questions. Holly, that's huge. There's so much benefit to that. I really can't put it into a dollar amount because, again, it gives me the confidence to live. And I always say that I am living successfully with cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. And the programs that you all put together help give me the confidence to do that and to continue to do that. Because for me, information is power.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, it kind of leads me into my next question. You give back. You are a champion, a warrior, part of our community. You are just an amazing person. And you spend so much of your time in addition to having a full life, your own kids, right? You've got a full life. It's not like you're sitting back and this is it. This is what you're doing. Why
Right.
do you spend so much time giving back to the other people in our community? I mean, you're going to be with us in April. You are
Yes.
flying all over the country. You're advocating. You are helping people who are seeing the same kind of a treatment as you understand what they're going to face. Why does that mean something to you?
Is again, oftentimes those things that we are completely out of our control. However, Holly, the people around me have been so supportive. My nurses, oh my God. And I tell them all when I get rich, I say, y'all know I'm gonna take care of y'all, right? I mean, because they the way people have given to me as I continue to live with this, I couldn't have, there's no way I could stand here and do that without how they've given back to me. The other thing, Holly, in particularly in the African American community, information, our communities are the last to get the information. And
Mm.
oftentimes there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of misconceptions. That I remember when I did some volunteer work a couple of years with our local breast cancer awareness organization. And that work was specifically around inclusion, diversity and inclusion. And they didn't understand why they couldn't get more African American women engaged. And so we worked on that. But one of the things I found out in doing surveys is that there was a percentage of Black women that always believed breast cancer was a white woman's disease. And I'm like, what?
Gosh.
I'm like, but you have breasts too. And I think, and what it goes back to is the messaging. What does the messaging look like? Who do you see plastered on on all the media? And so that the myths and the misunderstandings, when I share with people, even now that I have a blood cancer, they're like, what? Black people get blood cancers? Holly. And so it is my social platform. I'm going to use it to say, look, y'all, okay, are y'all listening to me? You get a rash, I want you to go to the doctor. I don't want you out here believing that our melanin somehow protects us from these types of things, because it does not. So that awareness is huge. And so if I can say anything and share my story and people look at me and say, okay, well, it can happen and it does happen. We're not immune to it. And this is our favorite cooking show host. So she wouldn't be telling us this if it were not so. And so I just want people to know and be aware that these diagnoses happen to people who look like us, and don't be afraid. There is, in our community, there's some distrust with the medical industry. I remember when I first started doing the work that I do with senior citizens, and I did a flu clinic. I had 3 women come down. Okay. And I'm like, well, don't they want a flu shot? Or so one of the older gentlemen pulled me to the side. He says, honey, he said, we don't trust them like that. We don't know what's in that vial. And then he said to me, he said, I know you're too young to remember the Tuskegee Airmen experiment. He said, and if they'll do that to the cream of the crop of us, he said, what do you think they'll do to little old me? He said, so yeah, no, nobody's coming down for a flu shot. And so there's such a distrust in my community with the healthcare community. And I get it. I understand. However, we have to go to the doctor. We cannot not go, but also, which is one of the reasons I'm here. You go to the doctor and you don't understand what they're saying. Come on, I'll pick up that phone and we're going to talk through this so that you can understand what's going on with your body.
Right.
And it is awareness is everything. And that is why I will always, always share, and I'll show people me at treatment, and, and to not be afraid. Because again, fear can keep us stuck. It can keep us from seeking the help that we need. I have resident, you want me to go to the doctor with you? I'll go with you. No problem. What time? And tell me what's going on. And teaching them how to, when you go to the doctor, have your questions ready. Don't go to the doctor empty handed. Even now, when I go to the doctor, when I go see my oncology team every 6 months, oh, I got questions. I got them already prepared because we're going to have a conversation about this. So, but that helps further educate you and develop that trusting relationship between you and that healthcare team, because it has to be there, you know? And so that is one of the reasons why it is just so important to me to continue to share, because I never know who's watching, never know who's listening. And sometimes I'll get people that'll send me an inbox and say, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. You know, thank you for sharing your story." Because it's needed. We need to know and be aware as much as possible, you know, and also go get help. And even newly diagnosed patients, hey, you need a list of a specialist. I'm going to need you to go to the Cutaneous Lymphoma Foundation's website. There's a locator there for you, okay? Because this is nothing to play with. And it's very important that you're connected with doctors who know this, because it's so rare. And, you know, use those tools that are there for you, the programming that's there for you, so that, again, so it builds that confidence and help you, I think, live in peace, come to peace with your diagnosis, and it helps you live in peace instead of a constant fear of what's next.
Well, you certainly do that. You certainly live your best life, at least from the outside perspective. I so enjoy following you. You mentioned about your social media and about your cooking show. I so enjoy following you and seeing you are such an inspiration and full of energy, full of joy, spreading joy amongst the community, raising awareness. You know, I had a question about misconceptions, and I don't even have to ask it unless you want to address it further, because you so beautifully talk about intertwining why you do what you do. And it really is because you believe that we need to get rid of these misconceptions and we need people to live their best
Absolutely.
life. I am so honored to be able to say that I know you and you are part of our world, and I'm so grateful for all that you do for us and for the entire cutaneous lymphoma community. Is there anything I've missed, Sheila? Is there anything that our listeners need to know about you, your journey, and what they need to carry ahead with?
I just want people to know that this is not, even though the diagnosis is serious, it is, you know, and we shouldn't take it lightly. I would never imply that. But I didn't even start my cooking show until after my diagnosis, because it was like before then I was like, who wants to hear me? Who wants to see me cooking? But after my diagnosis, I'm like, oh no, they're going to hear me. They're going to hear about this diagnosis. They're going to hear about food. But it really said to me, look, if there's something you want to do it. You know,
Mhm.
because the reality is that tomorrow is not promised to us at all, a diagnosis or not. Okay. And so, really, the diagnosis gave me the boldness and the courage to go ahead and do it. And so, if there's something out there you want to do it. Because look, what else could happen? Somebody say no, or somebody say they don't like it. Then you know what? You keep going. And I think too, for us with the diagnosis, is that, you know what, I have an opportunity here to do what I really want to do, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it, but also I'm going to use that platform to raise awareness. And I say to it is not, this show is not about me. It is about the guests that come on and the amazing work that they're doing in the community to spread the word, to so the community is aware that these programs and services and stuff are there available for them. And so I say do it, you know, and I'm all, if you want some help, call me. Look, we can talk about it. I can talk with you about it. And so that living and thriving, regardless of the diagnosis, is just something that's very important to me. And I want other cutaneous lymphoma warriors to know that and understand it doesn't mean you got to stop living. We have to live. And because I did get a second chance to live, I'm going to do any and everything I can to help raise awareness and spread joy because it's so important.
Well, we can't thank
And
you
and
enough.
thank you, Holly. And here's the other thing too, you and the team there to commit your lives to us. I know that there are many careers that you got, but your willingness to give and to give in this way to help ensure that we're okay. And I say often, we're in the circle of life together. And I appreciate you, Holly, and everybody at the foundation who works every single day so that myself and other patients can have and live and understand the world around us as we navigate, through this diagnosis. It is very important. And I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for saying that, Sheila. You are just
You're welcome.
you touch a special place in my heart, and I'm just so grateful to have you as part of our community and for all that you do for the foundation and for the other cutaneous lymphoma warriors. You are truly a champion. Thank you for your time today. And we will be sure to put a link to your show in our show notes so other members of our community can link back to that. But that brings us to the end of our episode today of Coffee and Community Cutaneous Lymphoma Conversations. We hope that our audience found the discussion as insightful and inspiring as I did. And before we go, I want to make sure that we thank our corporate sponsors for their commitment, as well as to Sheila for her time and commitment to the foundation. And remember to find more episodes, resources, and a full list of our sponsors on our website at www.clfoundation.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review for your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us to gain more listeners. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected, and take care.